would like to do Tom v. State?
Okay.
All right.
So, let's read the first paragraph. It says, this issue, the issue in this case is whether the Animal Cruelty Statute, Maryland Code, is applicable to research institute conducting medical and scientific research pursuant to a federal program. So they said it wasn't. And what we have here is Mr. Taub.
Dr. Taub.
So Dr. Taub, he is working with non-human primates for, I think it's like to help stroke victims. And I guess what they do is they kind of give the monkeys like a stroke, I guess, or simulate the symptoms in their arm, and then test it and work on treatments and cures there. And the big, what happened here was that the court held that he was not subject to the Maryland statute because this is a federally funded grant, the NIH grant, I believe, and that preempts the Maryland statute. I think they also talk about the language of the statute with the acts of unnecessary and justifiable pain or suffering, that that didn't really apply here. And I think that's about it. It didn't seem like it was like a real horrible, I mean, obviously they were testing on the animals and using the animals for research, but it didn't seem like they were being like malicious or really cruel or anything like that about it. It was just kind of what was happening.
Well, plus they say, on page 513, they say, involved laboratory is subject to detailed regulations under the Secretary of Agriculture set forth specifications for humane handling, treatment, transportation of non-human, blah, 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 veterinary care. Provision is made for recognition and preservation of the validity of research purposes. So in other words, it seems that it's saying, the case is saying that it's highly regulated, first of all, so he couldn't have been doing something wrong. And the provision is made, he does get to do some things for research, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. In other words, it's kind of a buy, really.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because there's legislation under the Animal Welfare Act here, so these things they think have been thought of, and they abide by them, so it's okay. What do you think of that? Do you agree?
I agree. I mean, as long as they're regulated and they're not just giving carte blanche to do whatever they want to these animals in the name of science, which seems like what's going on here, that is regulated and there's standards in place. They're not just, I don't know, going nuts and doing whatever they want.
Cutting pots off.
And that's okay. That's okay. I think if it's going to go for good scientific research to save human lives. I mean, it's unfortunate. I guess it would be that non-human primate that is tested on this. It is pretty bad, but I don't know. Maybe this is just kind of. I think it is justifiable.
Okay. Competing interests here. Has the USDA struck the right balance? On the one hand, you have conditions and protection of the animals. On the other hand, you have research for scientific purposes, for medicine. Is this the right balance, or do you think that there should be more considerations either way?
I think what Fred pointed out is he had received federal grant money, so he again gets another buy, really, right? You know what I'm saying?
Yes, but it doesn't answer the question.
I don't think they have to be competing interests. I think that you want to you don't want to stifle the scientific research, and you want to promote that, you want to fund that, you want to support that. At the same time, you want to avoid the unnecessary, unjustifiable pain or suffering for animals. I think you can. I think they're saying that this, because it must be painful and the animals do suffer. They're saying it is justifiable, and that's always all the animal essentially we read. Maybe it's tough, but we use animals to make our lives better, whether it's horses or donkeys or anything. Like, there is some sort of suffering that happens a lot of the times with animals, and this is just another example of that. And I think as long as it's regulated and people are, keeping an eye on it, it doesn't get out of hand, and that's okay.
Is there a way to accomplish the same goal without causing the animals to suffer?
Yeah, maybe they could gear the language more towards instead of any unnecessary or unjustifiable, because I guess that kind of is a little loose. Because if you just say, well, it's justifiable, they can do anything in the name of science. So if they make it towards, like, I don't know, they gotta sedate the animals, they gotta, because I don't want to read anything about anything like that, but if they could probably, even if it is, by the books and by the code, they could probably do more to make it a little less painful for the monkeys, I guess, I don't know.
What do others think?
I wonder if they could do more with, like, simulations on screen, you know what I mean? Instead of actually doing the animals white, I wonder if they could do something with...
I was trying to think of the technology side too,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
can you get real results? Because I was thinking, I was like, everyone does reenactments and everything else through technology, but can you really get the end result of what you're trying to accomplish?
We'll talk about that in a minute,
Oh, okay.
but good for breaking that up.
I was just thinking that.
Yeah, think about that.
Okay.
Or do it on mice.
So what?
Well, instead of like monkeys, I don't know. Unlike animals that
Well, they probably use
Super
monkeys because they're
tight.
supposed to be
Because they're-
closest to us.
right,
Yeah. Genetic.
but they're also like more intelligent and like
Mhm.
they're gonna.
So what's the purpose of the Animal Welfare Act? Or a purpose of it?
Wasn't it just
Primary purpose of it?
to protect most animal used in research, right? As far as to broaden
To protect them how?
the certain kinds of animals that we used and
Provide humane care and treatment. In other words,
Okay.
even though they're research animals, they're still to be provided, they're still to be fed, watered.
Okay, so maybe to protect them from cruelty?
Right.
It says
Make sure they're being treated humanely? So, how strong is the act, or of what use is the act, if one of its very purposes is now being undermined by the specific activities allowed under it?
Well, that's the humane and cruel
So
argument,
if there's
isn't
an
it?
activity that's, well, sort of, if there's an activity that's found to violate state anti-cruelty laws, like, so you take it outside of the research aspect, and over here, it would be violative of cruelty laws. But inside the act, it's now covered. So it's acceptable.
Well, that's that pass, right? There's your pass for research.
It's competing
Right.
interests.
Right,
But within the same act.
right.
Because they can't make the act so encompassing to protect the animals that it disallows any
Research.
research. So you kind of got to reach a middle ground. It doesn't really, I don't really know if you can reach a middle ground, right? Because any
Right.
testing is going to be invasive, and I don't know about cruel, but it's not going to be the way the animal, it's not going to be, let the animal live free and do whatever it wants as it usually would, so any testing is going to be too far to get to the other side.
Do you think maybe the act is a little bit preemptive in nature? In other words, let's find these activities acceptable before somebody else challenges the cruelty aspect of it. And does it serve more as a shelter for the research? Or do you think it truly has the animal's welfare
I think it's a pass.
as its
Shelter.
interest?
I think it's a pass.
I don't know, I don't have an opinion either way, I'm just,
I think it's a needed pass,
it's
though.
definitely, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think you can use animals in research and have animal rights activists be okay with it, right? For people on that side, there's going to be no way you can use an animal in research that's
At
going to be
all.
acceptable, right?
Yeah.
So it's really, I don't know, there's no give and take here, right? It's kind of like
yeah, and you're right, it's hard to find middle ground.
that's what they're trying to do, but I guess they can't because the two sides are so far apart. If one side says absolutely not, and they say, well, yeah, we're going to, but we'll try to, come over to your way, but they're still too far apart.
So we have this act, just just to put it in perspective what we've been studying, that seems to be for the benefit of the animals. However, acts that would normally be considered cruel anywhere else are acceptable under the Act. And the only way to get standing to challenge anything under the Act is to be directly involved with the animals in some way, as a researcher or as a, I don't know, maybe a person responsible for the care of the animals might have standing. I don't know.
So an organization for the protection of the animals wouldn't have standing?
Maybe, right? They've done that before.
Yeah.
It was
Under
like
the Act, maybe, yeah. Maybe, but there's no citizen supervision, so I don't know how much.
Or if it was your animal that was taken or stolen, when they talk about animals being taken and sold to research facilities, that was your animal.
Your pet monkey.
But that's not the Act, you wouldn't sue under that. That would be a tort.
Like, even if it was your animal, if that animal was then used in the research.
If Brandon takes your animal to sell it to Kate to do research on,
I guess Kate
That's
would have to sell the
criminal.
animal,
Yeah.
right?
yeah, I mean, there's criminal, exactly, you'd go after Brandon.
Yeah.
I mean, you might
I don't know.
her to, but she doesn't, if she doesn't know where it's
No.
coming from.
Right.
Also said some information here, like that the act is criticized because it excludes the rats and mice, which are animals that are most used.
Yeah, we did that case already.
I know, and then it says it was amended in 1970 to include warm-blooded animals, but then subsequently excluded in 2002. So it just went back and forth. All right, no, just interesting.
Right. So that's the other aspect of the Act.
That it excludes
birds,
some
mice, and
animals.
rats.
Right.
Yeah. Put some in and put some out. And it just so happens that it excludes the ones that are mostly used for research. Just
How
so
convenient.
Yeah.
All right, Glickman. Brandon, you want to do it?
Sure. So, court case argued on behalf of the Animal Legal Defense Fund versus Daniel Glickman for the inhumane treatment for a primate named Barney at a Long Island game farm park. A man named Mark Jernov had visited this park on a regular basis and noted that the primate had been neglected. He filed suit against the USDA, failing to meet the minimum standards. Oh, I remember when we did this one.
Yeah.
I was trying to remember the case. U.S. Court of Appeals ruled that he had standing to sue. The merits of the case were determined by a later Animal Legal Defense Fund Glickman, in which the court rejected Jernov's argument and upheld the validity of the USDA regulations. Let's see. So I'm trying to get past the district court stuff.
The defendant is appealing the earlier decision that the
Mhm.
secretary set no minimum requirements.
Jernov argues that the plain language of the statute, the secretary shall establish minimum requirements for physical environment adequate to promote the psychological well-being of primates. I'm trying to find his point.
What are the requirements that we're talking about,
Mhm.
or the regulations?
Engineering standards and performance standards.
Good. What's the difference between the two?
The way they're,
It says engineering standards require restraints are generally prohibited, subject to certain exceptions as determined by the veterinarian. The type of enclosures, whether there's swings and apparatus is appropriate to the type of breed and animal, and whether the infants can be taken away from their mother too early and put in separate housing.
Right. So the specific requirements that they have to follow.
The
those are
specs.
Engineering
The
standards.
specs.
Yeah.
Right.
And what's a performance standard?
Performance standards, psychological well-being of the primate facilities must develop performance plans, documents, they must document how they're going to set up you know,
How are they going to carry out? How are they going to
Right.
enforce to make sure that the
the
engineering
specs are
standards are
met.
met?
Right.
Exactly. Okay.
So in his appeal, in the defendant's appeal, the defendant comes back, first the court found for Turnove, or whatever his name is. They
Turnove.
found for him, and they said the specs are wrong, there's no specs. Then the defendant appeals, and the court comes back and says, actually, what happened was, there are specs, there are engineering standards, and there are performance standards. In fact, it's above and beyond
What they
what
need
is
to be.
mandatory in the specs.
Good. And what did the court say about Congress? Did you get that?
They said that the Secretary of the USD was the USDA, because it's administrative agency under con law.
Here we go.
You know, I am so sorry about that.
I'm telling you, I passed con law.
Yeah?
Thanks, guys. Sorry I haven't been here enough, but
Oh, excellent.
only like 30% of our class, it was
Not
bad.
even that many.
Really?
It's really bad.
After the curve?
Really?
After the curve?
Oh, no, before the curve.
Well, they also curved it. It's still a lot of people, so.
Really?
Good for you.
Now they can't.
Allow yourself to be able to fail it. I didn't.
Oh, yeah.
So
A couple people came out and
Have a
said
mulligan?
that wasn't fair.
it was 40 hours of studying for
They
2
said
weeks.
they really gave it to us on that one. I think that was a comment out of someone's mouth.
Everybody was flipping out, I mean,
Well, especially if you're on
because
the
we
bubble.
were there, so people were walking out and they were just unbelievable.
No, there's one more test, right?
Property.
And a lot of people that was like a
Almost
bubble
there.
test. So
It's awful. But anyways, so I see con law stuff now. I'm like, I got that. But the president can appoint the secretary, right? But then once the secretary has the authority to then appoint the other people below him, which doesn't really pertain to this case, but they are able to then enforce the regulations that they're setting because Congress sort of vests that to that agency. It's a federal agency. So in
What
this
about
holding,
What about the court and Congress? So why is the court
it
here?
says,
Oh,
it says where Congress delegates power to an agency to regulate
Got it.
the court's not going to
on
step
the
in.
borders of one, courts cannot interfere with the reasonable interpretations of.
Right, if
equitable
Congress has spoken
evidence.
to a precise issue, and in this case it has through the agency and the
Mhm.
regulations, the court isn't going to
Overstep.
interpret that
It would be.
turn it, exactly.
isn't it when they dominate a certain thing? Isn't that what it is?
Field of preemption?
Yeah,
Well, not
exactly.
really.
no.
Yeah.
No, it's just sort of the separation of powers in federalism, and that they're not going to
Just stay
overstep each
out of the way,
other's.
Yeah.
Right. And does the court want to get involved in figuring out what requirements are adequate or humane?
No.
Are the regulations, in this case, promulgated by the Secretary, are they reasonable in light of the AWA, the purpose of the AWA?
They said it was, right?
Seemed to be, yeah.
No, I'm asking you.
Seems like they set up.
I know the court thinks so.
Yeah.
They set a floor, right? I mean, like, so this is the minimum you need to
On the cage has restraints. Yeah.
Right. And
So do you
they
think
go
it's
above it.
consistent with the Animal Welfare Act?
unnecessary harming of animals for, I guess, right? I'm trying to think of the language, what it says in the act. Does it say the use of non-human animals in invasive biomedical research and testing?
Plus, they talk about, because there's so many breeds of animals and so many classes involved, I mean, the secretary had to make, the regulations had to be somewhat broad to be able to account for the specs and the plans for all the animals.
Okay. Do you agree with that?
Don't you need to know like a lot about non-human primates to really answer that question? It sounds good. There's no restraints and cage size based on size. The animals, like that all makes sense to me, but I don't know if that's
The secretary knows.
he might, right? He or she must. So I mean, it doesn't seem like outrageous. Like these all seem like pretty good things. If we're talking about minimum requirements,
Okay.
I guess it sounds okay to me, but.
But after all, it is the government.
So Now let's get back to Brandon's point a little bit earlier about animal testing. There's a lot of debate. As Fred said, most people are either really against it under any circumstances, but then there's this almost silent majority that are fine with it for medical research or those purposes. So animals can be tested, for cosmetics and other non-essential things, and for medicine. Technology has advanced such that there are computer models and simulations that can achieve similar results, but you're not doing it on a live organism. However, the flip side of that is that nothing is a perfect substitute for a human. So
no matter what,
if you test on animals, they're still going to be different. The DNA is still a little different. Even if you find the closest thing, all the intricacies are still not 100%. Then there are those, getting back on the other side, who say a closer match would be human tissue, not necessarily on people, that because they have to be willing subjects, but tissue. So there's several arguments.
Yeah, with science, I mean, if they could do away with the animal thing, I think it would be, I'm all about it. So I'm one of those people who just block it out, like, if it works, however you did it. But when it comes seriously, because you don't like to think about that when I don't know how much everyone likes animals, and when it comes down to it, you give it some disease that obviously affects humans, and then you go and find the cure for it. I mean, I don't think if technology, just like you said, there's no perfect match. So if it can simulate it and get it somewhat close, when do you think that time will be that they'll make that switch?
I think if humans consent to testing on themselves because people don't, I don't know, I've never done, people like, you can test out a drug or test out things like that.
People do experimental drugs
for money. So if people are okay with testing drugs on themselves, I don't think we're ever going to get to the point where people, in the vast majority, become okay with not testing them on animals. I don't know, it just doesn't seem like, I don't know, and plus if you make the argument, well, it's bad for animals, but so if you kill 5,000 monkeys in an effort to find a cure or a treatment for stroke victims, and 5,000 monkeys die over the course of 5 years or whatever the numbers are, but that has saved X many human lives and helped, whatever X many suffering people of this disease. I think, I don't know, it's tough to, it's bad that the animals died, but it's good for what we've done for human beings. I think, I don't know, it's like, maybe we can't value, I think we can definitely value human life over animal life, and that doesn't mean that we're, I don't know, cruel or inhumane. I think that's just kind of part of what we're doing here. And I'm sure that's what it's so upsetting for us to have somebody hear that really feel strongly for that, but I don't know.
Would you feel the same way if many of those tests on the monkeys showed a lot of promise, and then you go and, find some drug or something in the treatment for humans, and it's not at all the same results as on the monkeys, and humans are getting harmed as a result of relying on this, for lack of a better word, false positives?
Yeah, I'm sure that happens too.
It has happened.
Yeah.
Definitely. I just pulled up an article that says penicillin is toxic in guinea pigs, but invaluable to the humans. Morphine causes hyperexcitement in cats, but a calming effect in humans. So it's like, just like you were saying there.
Well, that's kind of the opposite. I'm saying that something works well in animals, and we think this is the next great cure, and we bring it to people, and then we do damage to the subjects.
Yeah, and it doesn't do anything.
Subjects.
I guess that's better than, the same thing could happen with the computer simulation or anything else we do. But I think that, I don't know, but I would assume that we test it on animals and we see, okay, yeah, well, this works on animals, so let's try a small human population. We'll try it on them. People that are willing to consent to this. And so we tried it on them, great. Well, it didn't work, so let's go back to the animals and try it again, and then we'll go back to the people. So I think it's like a first test, like that first, I don't know, like the canary in the coal mine, like that should be a canary, it shouldn't be a person. Then you bring people down there, well, yeah, maybe it is bad, and people die too, but we didn't bring everybody down there. It's still like fueling progress for
Trial and error.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, that's all it really is. So.
Patty, what do you think?
Well, I think if you said, we're going to kill 100 monkeys and we're going to cure childhood cancer, everybody would go, okay. You know what I'm saying? So I think it's,
What's the return?
yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. I think it's a necessary evil.
How
I
many?
mean, so they stopped, the good thing is they stopped, putting mascara on rabbits. So that, I mean, that's at least good. You know what I'm saying?
Some companies have.
Right, right. So, I mean, but at the same time, there are certain things you have to use animals for, I think, right?
I think there's a lot more awareness about it now, certainly, which I think is really good.
Yeah, because you'll pick a bottle up and you look and it'll say
Right.
test on animals. You go, okay, yeah.
Patty, is there any number, and I'm not saying this to you personally, I'm just kind of throwing it out there for the general public, and you're just going to be the one to answer it. Do you think there's any number? So you said most people, and I agree with you saying this, most people would say 100 monkeys. If we sacrifice 100 monkeys in an effort to cure childhood cancer,
Right.
most people would find that a reasonable
Acceptable.
trade-off.
Yeah.
At what point does the number get so large that you start to think maybe this isn't something
stop.
we should be doing? Yeah.
How many monkeys are there in the world?
And they're about to be endangered.
I think the answer, I feel
Yep.
like it endangers
Yep.
the species.
Yep.
Maybe, but probably still, I don't know.
That's a tough question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Here you have a child with cancer and here you have some dead monkeys. How many children, well, here's another thing. How many children have the cancer? So if 4 children have the cancer, maybe you only do 2 monkeys. You know what I'm saying? So maybe that also has to factor in.
How widespread is the
Right.
disease that you're trying to cure?
How helpful would this research be?
I think the only thing you could think about as far as comparing animal lives to human lives is, it doesn't matter if it's 1 human or I think or 1,000 people or 1,000,000 people. I think if it's, the only time you could start to think about being like, maybe I don't know, this is close, if you're talking about like completely wiping out a species. Apart from that, I don't think there's any comparison you can make between animal life and human life. Because you could saddle out that.
What about 1,000 rats to cure childhood cancer? Can you do that?
Rabbits?
Rats.
Rats, yeah, I'm saying any number of rats, with the exception of completely wiping rats off of the face of the earth, will be acceptable. For me, anyway. I'm sure people don't feel the
Because
same
people are
way.
putting out traps to like catch, rodents
Rats.
like that. They're not putting out traps to catch monkeys.
But I think even monkeys. I think even if we kill all but some monkeys, but that's and the end result is a curing of a disease that affects a number of people, or even if it's a small number. I still think that's okay.
But I think if you look at like the hierarchy of animals, I mean, I think that's where you're going to see it. People have different opinions on like what number would be okay and which animals would be okay, and
Right, the number of rats would be higher.
right. I mean, you're
Oh, yeah.
saying
The species, does the
Yeah.
species factor
Absolutely.
into the
Yes.
Yeah.
decision?
Because rats aren't cute, monkeys are,
Yeah.
right?
What if it were dogs?
Ooh.
Dogs and cats?
I think a dog would be more than happy to sacrifice itself for its owner.
It's
oh,
not for its owner, it's for these people, unknown people it doesn't even know.
Yeah.
no.
No dogs? Zero? Well, I think it's for between the cosmetic testing. And I think people like, if you don't want whatever, a shampoo brand to test on dogs, then don't buy that shampoo brand. And then that will, and if enough people care, then they'll go out of business or they'll have to change the way they do things. I think medicine's
Well, and they have, I think, right? Yeah.
so I think medicine's
Change,
just
yeah.
completely different. I don't know. I'm not going to move on. I don't think you're going to get me to move on this one. But
I'm not trying to.
you got me in a couple other
I'm
areas.
trying to get the discussion going, get you guys to think. Think about different aspects.
Yeah, you probably have less protesting for rats than you would for monkeys.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or cats and dogs.
What about vet schools that use animals in, like, for X-ray, for example, radiation, exposing them to a lot of radiation, and not harmful things that make the animals suffer at the time, but maybe long-term cause something?
Where do they get their animals from? Are they strays?
No, I know, I used to coach softball in a school that had a vet tech program, and they would bring in beagles every year, a whole batch of them. I don't know where they adopt them, from some farm, I think. And then at the end of the year, they adopt them out at the end of the school year.
So they didn't put them down, they gave them just people.
Oh, yeah, no,
Oh,
they
cool, that's
definitely
cool.
adopted them all out.
Oh, good.
Yeah, placed them in homes.
Oh, but you're saying, they're being subjected to this extra
For a whole
stuff.
school year, exactly. They're undergoing X-rays and
Being poked.
What about for med
Observation.
school? Like, I guess you could make the comparison of like,
Experimental testing, that's what I was thinking.
yeah, in medical school, I mean, they use cadavers obviously, but I'm sure they're using, the same thing for, fetal pigs and things like that at veterinary school. But I mean, are people offering to subject themselves to excessive X-rays at medical schools for testing?
you'd be surprised people do anything for money. Some people really.
Yeah, I mean, well, right? Like, I mean, if you're sick as a kid or whatever, I mean, I've had like, 5 X-rays in a year. Not every year, but like,
Yeah.
So I wonder if, I mean, those beagles, it was 1 year. It wasn't their whole lives that they were just trapped there and being
But it was
X-rayed.
more than 5 per beagle.
But that goes
They
for
go
the
3 or 4
greater,
classes a day.
but that's helping beagles and other dogs, right?
How is it helping beagles and other
This
dogs?
is what these veterinary, so it's training vets and
Right.
helping.
On how to X-ray, how to take X-rays.
Okay, I don't know if it's just extra. I'm saying like human beings. Like if you're very sick, you might opt for like an experimental test, and maybe it'll work, maybe it
Yeah.
won't. So I mean, these dogs aren't consenting to this, and they aren't sick. But at the same time, like that's for dogs. It's to help animals, and we have to. I mean, it's gonna happen one way or the other. Whether you know what I mean, like if it's a sick dog or if a dog that broke its leg and want to X-ray it, I mean they have to practice on something, right? So but that's still not. It's more about a noble cause, I guess, other than. I guess it's not. I don't know. Never mind. I'll retract that statement.
Would you be okay with somebody testing on a non-consenting, like a child, or somebody that doesn't give express consent to being X-rayed for the same exact reason?
No, but animals have less rights than humans.
They do. But that begs the question, we can't just say, well, that because they have less rights, they shouldn't be afforded more rights.
That's
Kate, you have the medical background. What do you think on this issue?
Come on.
Can you ask the question one more time?
It was more about the animal testing. Do you see a balance somewhere? Do you think it's fine the way it is? More alternative methods should be explored?
Well, I think sort of we're moving forward with technological advances that I think we are moving away from that. Certainly not 100% yet, but I mean, surgeons are trying to get to the point where like they could be in India and be operating something like laparoscopically, like on a video screen in an operating room. I mean, that's the way things are moving. So yeah, so animals, I think veterinarians being able to do something like that's going to be a lot farther off, but I think we'll be at a, I mean, if we're able to do that and we're moving towards that, then I think we will be much closer to like simulating robots that can have the same outcomes as testing on animals. Plus with all the stem cell stuff that's going on and all that kind of research and cloning and, that may really bring things away from testing on animals, I think. So
May bring what?
Like a cloned
things away
sheep.
from, yeah, well,
That's still a sheep, though, right? Or like talking about the cells.
the cells. So you're not, I mean, you can recreate your own organs and things like that, so they're not going to be doing as much on
Live.
testing on animals because they're not going to have to be concerned about growing pig kidneys or, you know what I mean? It's going to be your own that they're creating out of your blood, your, tissue. Yeah.
It's kind of scary, huh? I mean, it's kind of good in a way, but it's kind of like, ooh.
Well, if you need a heart
Okay.
transplant or a kidney transplant, it's better to be, if you could cord blank your own child's blood if you have kids and grow a perfect match for you, you're not going to have to wait for a cadaver for someone to die out in Chicago and have it, air flown, organ
their heart
inflated.
flown in. Yeah.
Yeah, or be on dialysis for 10 years and have to wait. I mean, people are going to be a lot healthier because of it, I think.
Except that cloning has its own issues. One of them being it causes a lot of pain in the person or animal being cloned.
Right. But if you're growing stem cells in a petri dish, which is, I mean, that's certainly different.
Can I ask a question? I don't know.
Yes.
Do they still use pig valves for hearts?
I don't know.
I had that. I don't know. He was an old guy.
I'm not sure, but I think they do.
I don't know if they still do that.
I think they do.
All right, so a couple things we're doing with cases. First is don't forget your presentations, you only have to the end of the semester. So think of something and let me know what night you're going to present.
Now, what study we're going to